So hello everyone and welcome to episode 5 of the viaGood podcast, a podcast designed to inspire you, our listeners from across the globe, to change our world via doing good. Now, every episode, our guests share ways that we can take action against the world's greatest challenges and achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And as always, links all about the UN goals are in the show notes. But today, as you will have noticed, we have a little bit of a different episode because we have 2 members of the viaGood team here, and we will be chatting all about our pet peeves in the climate change, climate emergency, sustainability space. And I will hand over to them to introduce themselves. So firstly, Zuzana, hello.
Hello everyone, my name is Zuzana and I work as a communications partner at viaGood.
Thanks. Hello, I'm Markéta and I work here as a project coordinator.
Wonderful, good, we're all acquainted. And in the office, sort of every day, we have so many chats about sustainability, about climate change, about the injustices in the world. And we thought it'd be really interesting to actually have that discussion live. So that's what this is. It's very, very unscripted and impromptu, but we hope you enjoy it. So what's your pet peeve in the sustainability sort of climate space? I know we talk a lot about, I guess, like second standards and the activities of celebrities and people who have a lot more money and influence than the average person not doing the right things, and that leading to us feeling, I guess, frustrated in all of the hard work we do. So let's chat about that. What is your pet peeve in the sort of celebrity culture, sustainability space?
Well, I have to begin with this one because my biggest pet peeve right now are probably Kardashians and their jet habits. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know about these guys. I guess you do.
Yeah.
So what do you think about it?
I think that a lot of pressure is put on us as individual people to make a difference. I learned a couple of years ago that the whole term carbon footprint came from BP. I don't know if you guys knew that, but basically they wanted to, I guess, like push all of the responsibility for making changes and like saving our planet to individuals. So they came up with this thing called carbon footprint, which we still use today, where people feel like they have to turn off their lights and like not travel using petrol and diesel because they individually can make a big difference, when actually it was like a big like oil company that came up with this term. So I feel like the level of annoyance knowing that gave me is just like duplicated on a daily basis when it comes to celebrities.
I had no idea whatsoever
that
an oil company came up with this.
Madness.
Wow.
So yeah, that's how I feel about it. It's just like, why should we be struggling when this is happening in the background? But I do think Kylie, what's the name?
I think it was Kylie, yeah.
Kylie, she spent like 20 minutes in the private jet.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I'm not even sure, I mean, if I were her, I would delete the photo. Like, I mean...
It's prestige, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's for the gram.
Okay, maybe I think that there is a beginning, maybe not really beginning, but a whole different group of people who just don't care, or maybe care, but their brand is like, why should I care? Like, I don't care, and they want to show it. So it even more like marginalize those like envy ideas. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's a different approach to this. But also I didn't know about this, about the footprint.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of systematic thing, and it's really unfair to push those things like into individuals, and also in our daily choices. For example, when we buy something, and many times we don't even know the suppliers' chains which are behind those like items which we are buying. So it's almost impossible, and it's also increasing the feeling of huge guilt. after everything which we do. So
yeah, I totally agree. I think that guilt is like something that if you feel guilty about something, it's easier to, I guess, shift the blame onto you for. So I think recognizing that I'm going to plug the last episode, no, a few episodes previously, an episode on a podcast with Kate Chambers where we spoke about this in a lot of depth. But she was saying that it's sort of driving climate anxiety. The fact that we feel like we single-handedly have to change the world, even though obviously we all need to do our bit and we all need to like act within reason. It cannot be like the whole like weight of the world on one person, which I find a bit relieving and like freeing to know.
Yeah, but then how do you alleviate the guilt? Even though, because for me, I know all these things. I know that, I mean, I don't have a private jet. Yeah. But still, I feel guilty buying something in plastic if I don't bring my own lunch or something. And so how do you, knowing all these things that are behind it, how do I alleviate that guilt anyway? Because it's still there.
I think that's a good question. I've got an answer, but I'll hand over to Markéta in case you have one too.
well, I would love to hear your answer first, but maybe the only thing which comes to my mind is just to knowing this might be helpful. But Kara, please.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think knowledge is really important, but I don't know like if there is an exact answer, but what I do personally is try to hold decision makers accountable, which sounds like really difficult, but actually it's not. For example, in the viaGood app, you can sign petitions, but more than anything, I think when, you know, you're voting for your MP or you're voting, or sorry, that's very UK specific, but you're voting for your representative of your local area or municipality, really ask them those questions. And like, it's really easy to write an email to your MP. I know it sounds crazy, but you can write an email, get lots of people to sign it, and really try and champion like system level change. And even if it doesn't work and they ignore you, I feel like, to me, I've done the best I can, and I'm not a millionaire to like go to farmers markets, drive around and like source all of my ingredients, and I don't have a private chef to like cook my meals every day, and I work full time, so there's no way that you can like have zero waste. Not no way, but an average person who works or has a family is not able to like live completely sustainable. So I take the guilt off myself and I try to like do something about it and channel the anger into like decision level making stuff. But it also sounds really overwhelming as an individual, but every sort of area has climate action groups. Like, I'm sure there are places that you can like join that are already doing it, where you don't have to yourself like write the letter to the MP, you can just sign it, for example. So yeah, that's my response, but I don't know if it will work. They're clearly not listening, so so yeah, that's my number one pet peeve. Another one, well, that was your pet peeve actually, I just stole it. But I agree with that pet peeve. And another one I have is having like one magic solution to like solving the climate crisis. When people say, you know, I'm never going to fly again, I think that's amazing and like a big choice, but that in itself is probably not enough to like make a bigger impact. So when people make these big sweeping claims like you should never fly, or you should always be vegan, or you should always like do whatever, that's my pet peeve, because it's not such a simple like choice to always do something, particularly for everyone. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I think it's actually quite hard for people to find the gray in between the white and the black, if you know what I mean. And I know I have this kind of a problem as well, in many areas of life. But yeah, I understand that I understand that this is a pet peeve.
Mm.
I get it.
But how do you mean this? You struggle to find the grey in this specific example. How do you mean?
I'm not saying that I'm struggling to find. Well, okay, I'm saying it actually, because as we were talking about the guilt, for example, I guess this is still. I still feel the guilt. You know, even though there's the whole background and I have a full knowledge of it. Okay, or not necessarily full.
Yeah, but you
but I have knowledge. Yeah, I understand it. But there is still the guilt. And I don't know. I guess I just should have been born into a perfect world.
I think that hits the nail on the head. I don't know if you have anything to build on that, Markéta.
Well, not really, to be honest. But it reminded me of mine bit, which I wanted to add.
Go for it.
And it was that the thing which I don't like the most is making from such a, for me, quite a big topics, a trend, a thing which one day is like the most important thing, and like 2 weeks after it's almost nothing. And all these girls and kids, which it was about 2 or 3 years ago. My sister is 8 years younger than me. And all girls in her school, in her class, used to buy scrunchies and these reusable water bottles. And they always used to say, like, save the turtles, XXX. And I was like, could this really, like, light up some, like, deep passion in this topic? And I was a little bit hopeful at that point, but then it just kind of blurred away and new trend came. So that's a thing which kind of hurts me, because I'm thinking that maybe just I have some thoughts that those people who could be touched by this topic already, like, enjoyed their time and it's gone. So I don't really know how to address it, because obviously those informations were there, they heard it, they maybe understood it, but they don't care anymore or any longer. Or maybe they do and I can't see it. It's a different perception, yeah.
But would you say that trends are always a bad thing? Because I agree. I think that's really, if people are doing it just to sort of jump on the bandwagon, then I understand. But I do think it kind of works equally in terms of, like, well, I guess maybe this is another pet peeve actually. It's very, very closely linked. But for example, all of the work that brands are doing at the moment on sustainability and consciousness, some can say it's greenwashing, but the point is, because it's trendy at the moment, people are even having these conversations in the first place. And it's definitely not enough. But I think, like, in order for things to, like, matter, even think about, like, 10 years ago, speaking about climate change, no one's going to be like, yeah, she's like a climate activist. It would be like, you're a tree hugger. And you're like, oh, weird. And now it's so normal because, like, it's super trendy, even though it's the same topic. And even if people don't fully understand it or, like, unpack what it even means or what you're, like, advocating for, it's accepted and it's, like, almost a norm. So I'm not sure if it's, like, I get it's annoying, but maybe it's necessary to, like, make a change.
Okay, I'm just more skeptical than you. I'm definitely sure that it's not enough, but maybe it is. Maybe it's like people, the awareness is rising, definitely. But also there were people in 60s and 70s which were passionate about it, and it was almost mainstream, or like the passion was quite huge, and the topic was big also. But maybe we see these consequences much more now, so the ground is better.
But
thank you for this point.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I just overspoke you.
No,
Spoke
please.
over you. No, I was going to say, like, do you see, because in the 60s and 70s, definitely, like, there were some huge names and people, like, writing on the topic. But equally, there was like a huge set of scientists,
Mhm,
quote
mhm.
unquote, who were like saying that it doesn't even exist. Whereas now, if someone says that climate change does not exist, they're immediately like, well, at least in my space, and the spaces that I see are cancelled, as Zuzana said. I don't know if you heard that. So I don't know. I think I definitely agree with you, but I also think trendiness to some extent is necessary for change, even if it's like false and people are just saying it because it's cool. I still think it's needed to like make things happen.
Okay, so yes, maybe you lighted the problem for me a little bit more, and let's hope that it's going to be better. But just in case, no, like for example, in Czech Republic, we used to have quite an influence person, and he wrote a book that the planet is not green but a blue planet, and he had a bunch of scientists, which were scientists but in a completely different field than in the climate and so on. So he had quite of influential people with titles, and people still kind of like hear it, and they don't go so deep to see that it's the book is like super low quality.
Oh, really?
So it really still has weight, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know. But then I guess arguably we're adding to the trend with this podcast.
Okay. But then,
yes.
oh, I'm sorry. The next thing is, even if we make trend of this, and even if we agree on that, that climate change is real, there still is a group of people who say, okay, it's real, it's a real problem, but there's nothing that we can do about it. I see it quite often in social medias. So this is also another thing which we should talk about, because I would like to know your opinions about it. What would you say that if someone would ask you or tell you, oh, I see that you are trying and so on, but why should I even try?
Like doomism, that's a good question. What do you think, Zuzana?
I mean, why not try? I think we know what climate doomism is, and we know that it doesn't help anyone. So, I mean, even if the climate crisis would eventually get worse, I mean, we should try. We should try to do something about it and with it. And I mean, doomism in general never ever helped anything, and it will never ever help anything in the future. So I think just in general we should try.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't even have anything to add. I think like there are always going to be people who bury their heads in the sand when things are difficult or when things are scary. But we just have to hope that the people who are optimistic and active outweigh the people who are in doom, or their actions actually inspire people to make an action and to like do something different. But that also leads nicely onto another pet peeve. I feel like all we have is pet peeves about climate change. We are positive as well. But another pet peeve of mine is when people focus on mitigation or mitigating carbon emissions, for example, and not also like adapting to the changes that have already been made. So, for example, in developing countries, I think we've seen all over social media what's happening in Pakistan, but that's just one example of like a country that's really suffering because of climate change. And when people focus on like, as we say, like turning off the lights and like reducing carbon and reducing their carbon footprints, that kind of belittles the experience that people are having now, because even if it were to work, that if we all reduced our carbon footprint, then the impacts of climate change wouldn't be as bad later on. That protects only a certain amount of people and not people that are actually like being flooded out of their homes now. So that's a really big pet peeve of mine, when we're not looking for solutions to help people at the moment, as well as obviously like reducing for the future, but focusing on like basically a northern perspective of because the climate crisis is going to affect us in like a generation or so, we can chill and just like reduce and, you know, offset what we like sort of use and just leave everybody else to sort of suffer with the consequences. So that's a bigger than a pet peeve, something that I think is a real injustice. And I don't know if you guys have anything to build on that.
Sure.
Well, okay. Well, I definitely agree with it, and it also is connected with the like kind of ability to really be responsible for something, because still we hear not even in the individual level, but also in the level of countries or nations, we hear that, well, we shouldn't be the first who start with it, and we can hear it from like quite a rich countries. And this is, according to me, really irresponsible. So I think that it's connected with this thing.
Definitely.
I just Denmark actually came to my mind. I don't know if you've heard, but they are the first country that is about to how to say it, pay reparation.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think about this?
Big topic. I'd have to think about that. Reparations in what sense though? Because I've heard the news, but do you know specifically what they're doing? Because I know, for example, during all of the COPs, more recently, COP26 and this COP approaching, loss and damage, which is basically what we've been talking about, like rectifying this sort of damage that climate change as a result of, I guess, global north activities have caused destruction in the global south. So we should actually like pay for repairs and like pay for the loss and damage because of the historical, like, I guess, responsibility that lies with us. So is it reparations in that sense, or like literally just giving money? Because that's really interesting, like how I'd love to know like the architecture behind it, like what exactly they're doing and how they're going about it.
Do you know what? Honestly, I know very shallow information about this right now. So yeah, my knowledge about this is shallow as of now. So I might not tell you more. I just got quite excited when I saw this.
Yeah. We will research and come and update you on viaGood social media channels. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's great. Like, I think it's really necessary to answer your question. Industrialization and people here in the global north really messed up the planet. So I think they should pay for it to some extent now. How? I think that's what COP is for, but it should happen. Totally. Anything to add to our third speaker?
Not really. Sometimes I'm just losing the hope with the time running out, and with several COPs which like happened in the past. But yeah, let's hope that's all we have. And now we have democracy, so we still can act and change things. But let's hope in a higher level. So in a level of COP, that's what I meant.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. That was really like juicy topic, but maybe we can be lighter. Maybe there's something else that like really gets you like irked up.
Yeah, I just thought about one pet peeve of mine. As you guys know about me, I'm a passionate rubbish picker.
I was wondering what was coming next. I was like, passionate what?
I was just thinking about how I'm gonna say the term.
She is a passionate rubbish picker.
Yeah. And I know there's this whole plugging thing. It's called plugging. It's a combination of Swedish word and of English jogging.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it's not taking walks, but you run, and you also litter pick. So this is not what I do. I just walk. But back to the pet peeve. So many times I just get people telling me, why do I bother? Because it's gonna be there, tomorrow anyway. And I have a really hard time explaining to them that, that if you do this to make yourself angry about other people's actions, then you shouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm making sense. If if any advanced litter picker is listening, I think they will know what I'm talking about. But yeah, this is my pet peeve.
Yeah, that's a really good one, Zuzana. Yeah, I think it relates also to just like acting in general, or like doing any sort of activity. What's the point of anything? You can really get kind of like existential if you start only doing things because of like, definitely it's going to have some sort of result. Otherwise there wouldn't be a point of doing anything, because everything is uncertain. So I think it's great that you litter pick, and I think people who question that are probably just lazy. Yeah. I'm trying to think of more pet peeves. I mean, we're always complaining in the office about things that
are we? We're so, we're the most optimistic office like ever.
Yes, but complaining with the point of making change,
Okay.
like this episode, which will give you the point at the end. Why we're complaining. Yeah. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Okay,
Markéta.
so I have one, but you can start if you want, because I thought that maybe you have some.
No, fire away.
Okay, so my next one is people who are like eco-conscious, but still feel that they have, because they are like, they know more things about this topic, feel like they can judge others. That's thing which I kind of really don't like, and I don't appreciate it, because it's counterproductive, I would say, at least. So I think that the thing that we might know just a little bit more about this thing doesn't give us a right to judge others. And sometimes it's I feel that some communities are a little bit fancy, because they think that they have the right, because maybe they are vegans and so on. So this is for me quite a bad road. And I think that we should, maybe the message, a small message of this podcast might be that we are aware of like crazy things which bothers us, but we still can stay open and try to understand why other people are different than us, and to find this like willingness to listen to others, because I think that's one of the worst things is to stop listening and to close yourself in a tiny bubble and still like improving just the one opinion. So this is the second thing, to kind of certain kind of bitterness which is sometimes rising in some people.
Completely second that, I think, but that ties back to a few of the other pet peeves that we've had, like having a silver bullet, or like a, if you do this then everything's going to be great kind of approach. I think veganism is one of them, and quite a controversial issue, but it's only one. Like there are many different versions of this problem, but I think it's really interesting that veganism in particular has been seen as a planetary diet, and as something that a lot of people think, in virtue of being vegan, then you are saving the planet, which I think, as with everything in life, is a bit more complicated than that, and there are a few more caveats. And I find it really interesting if people decide to consume animal products, even if they're in a sustainable way, such as like consuming locally, or you have your own chickens and you have eggs from your chicken coop. that in itself, just because it's not vegan and you're still consuming animal products, it's not the same as like contributing to like mass production of eggs, for example. So I think it's really interesting when people are having very complex conversations, but in a very limited way. That is a big pet peeve, but particularly with veganism. However, as an ex-vegan, I love vegans, but I just think it's not a solution in itself. I think we should all consume less meat, but again, it's like the black and white thinking. I don't think it has to be, if you're not 100% this thing, then it's bad. Particularly when we have massive supermarkets and most people consume their food from very far away in different countries, and we don't eat seasonally, even if we're vegan. So I could talk about this forever because it's something I'm really interested in. But yes, there is no silver bullet.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on this. And I think it's an issue of each and every one of us. I think we should just strive to find our personal balance. And unfortunately, the education that we have is not necessarily allowing us to find this personal balance. And I think that is what actually contributes to the black and white thinking, as you were saying. So it just came to my mind that education is very, very important in this, I think, or just being engaged. Do I want to say this word? Sorry. Being encouraged to think critically, to look for reliable sources of information and stuff like this. So,
of which you can find in viaGood as well.
Exactly.
Everything is fact checked. But yeah, I do think, like, before I let somebody else have another pet peeve, it seems like I have all the pet peeves. But another thing that's very closely related, which again we spoke about in a previous episode of the podcast, is complex issues being simplified into an infographic and then shared on Instagram stories. That to me is like number one pet peeve, because I think people mean well and they want to spread awareness, and in itself it's not negative, but it really, really does contribute to the issue of people thinking they're informed because they saw an infographic, and then having conversations that aren't fully complete. So I don't know what the solution is, but maybe if there is an infographic to share, there can also be an accompanying 15-minute video explaining the issue in a bit more depth, because nothing complex can be presented on one tiny little Instagram story. Not to discourage people from sharing, of course, but I just think it should always come with caveats and understandings that the person who's saying it, what position they're coming from, what impact it has on other people in a different place in the world. Like, all of these things matter when it comes to complicated issues such as climate change or war or anything like that. Nothing can be summarized on one slide.
Yeah, on that note, I think we should share infographics on how other people share bad infographics.
An infographic on how to share an infographic. Yeah. Love it.
Okay.
Getting Inception here.
That's beautiful. I was thinking about my colleague. We actually spoke about a very similar topic, and we had a kind of clash of opinions, because he was all into that it's people's responsibility to find the sources, but it's not like people don't have time, but their attention is in a different place in like a millisecond. So I kind of like this about your job, like social media guys. Did you share the source? Because it's like super important for me, because then if you like it, if the topic catches you, then you can improve yourself and you can follow these informations more and more and more. And there's nothing worse than like, no, they're plenty of worst things. But I really don't like when I see something like super interesting and then I can't go any further because I don't know the source. And then I would definitely like unfollow or question the trustability of this source. So yeah.
It's really interesting. But it comes back to like, just because you see something in an infographic also doesn't mean it's true, even if you don't have the source. Or it might be true, but it might be partially true. And I think people tend to think like, particularly if they look great, the infographics, I think people are like, oh, that's amazing, I'm going to reshare it. Even if the source is there, they still might not go and check it with another source. So that would be my main takeaway. Like, it sounds like really exhausting and like a lot of work to check all sources and so on. But I think that responsibility only lies with you if you share it. You know, if you see something and you enjoy it, absorb that information if you can't be bothered to look for the source, but then don't like reshare it and perpetuate like something potentially false being circulated online.
I think that it's kind of connected to what Zuzana said, that we should think critically about the informations which we share and read. So, welcoming back to education. Yeah.
Definitely. I think a final pet peeve, because we can start wrapping up, unless anyone else has other pet peeves. But for me, my last one is seeing or behaving in a way that is always pessimistic, which is quite ironic given this episode. But I think being an activist, or maybe activist sounds like a very strong word. I mean activist in terms of like someone who is passionate about changing things. I think it's always important to have fun, and sometimes people forget that and think that you can't joke about like climate change or serious issues. But I also think that that's a pet peeve of mine, because like these are really hard, difficult topics, and I think you need a sense of humor. It doesn't mean that you're being ignorant or like a denialist, but I think like only being super focused on like the problem and not having any fun with it and trying to be creative in your solutions, I think that's really difficult, particularly if I speak to someone in a climate space and they're really negative. It kind of just makes me feel like, well, what's the point? Like kind of what you were saying, Markéta, like it's really demotivating if it's like nothing's going to change and we should all like only do everything perfectly or the world's going to end, because then you become a bit paralyzed. And like, yeah, I think we should have fun in the climate space and build a community.
Yeah. Do you think this sort of climate pessimism is like an issue of beginner climate activists? Because this is how it feels for me. You know, like in your early stages, you just get very pessimistic because you feel like you see everything behind the curtain, and maybe it has stages, you know?
What a concept. That's really interesting. I never thought about it like that. I don't know if you want to add to that, Markéta.
I would like you to elaborate on it, but then I would like to ask you something on this topic.
Cool. I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's mixed. Like, for example, I did quite a lot of work last year during COP26 in Glasgow, and I think I would partially agree, like particularly with COP. For example, like when I was speaking to some negotiators, they had like, I remember I was speaking to a French negotiator who was like advocating for gender. She was like working specifically on gender. And she was talking about like how exhausting it is to just get like one word inserted into any negotiation or into like any final agreement, because obviously all countries have to agree to some extent. So it's really interesting what you have to omit in these like high level negotiations. And it seems really easy from the outside to be like, oh my gosh, like this is all they achieved in 26 years, for example, now 27 with Egypt coming up. And I think that shows a level of misunderstanding of how difficult it is to like have everyone agree from all countries, global north, global south, on like such complex issues. So when people are like, COP is ineffective, for example, I'm neutral. I'm not saying whether it is or isn't, but COP is ineffective, and like we've had all of these years, almost 30 years, and not much has come out of it. I think that shows a bit of ignorance and misunderstanding of like, this is international like level legislation that people are trying to make, and if every word matters. And yeah, I think so to that scale, yes, I think sort of not being educated and aware of how difficult these things are, I guess create some sort of like pessimism. But at the same time, I think the more you know, and the longer you've been campaigning, particularly when I speak to like older campaigners, they're also tired, like really, really tired. So I don't know. I'm not sure if it's about like knowledge or it's about like disposition and just like personality. I have no idea. That was a long answer.
Yeah, but a good one. But maybe I'm not sure if I completely agree with you on this one, on this positive approach.
Mm-hmm.
Because it might be a personality, but it might be like so many like other consequences and things in like life of the person. And I think that we should allow not only here in like environmental topics, but we should allow us to be negative sometimes. I think that positivity might be really toxic. Yes, super toxic. For example, when you're going through something tough in your life, and your friend or like colleague will tell you, no, it's okay, it's going to be okay. I know it's not what you want to hear. You want to know that, not want to know, but what might help you is that you're not alone, and the other one can understand the real issue which you're going through. And the positivism will kill you. It's like, no, like the world is okay. Be positive, be like full of energy and be radiant, and you can't do it. You are lazy, or why are you like pessimistic? And then you are like kicked off the society because you can't perform as well as the others who are like enthusiastic. And you are going to darker and darker space because nobody has like understanding for you. So I think that I understand the conception of positivity and how it's nice and feel like welcomed by others and inspired by others and catched by the wonderful energy which is there. But I think that we should give enough space to like bad mood, to even like pessimistic things, because sometimes things are bad. And it's not good to say, no, it's going to be okay. We have to give them time. It's the same thing with the death. I think that sometimes we completely like forgot about. Sometimes people die in like 90 years, and we are like, oh, I didn't expect that he would die. What else should like person do in 90s? It's like,
I think we're coming back to the balance thing again with this.
Yeah, I think I want to make a point of clarification. I don't think we should be positive or have toxic positivity. I totally hear you. I agree. But I think there's a difference between being only negative and not seeing any sunshine in a bad situation, particularly en masse. So like how you feel internally, there are definitely days, particularly with the climate crisis, where I'm like, this is the worst thing ever, and like we're all gonna like die. But then there are other times where it's like, do you know what? This is actually funny. Particularly like this episode, we're making light of like really serious issues. We're showing humor. We're I guess connecting on negative things, but in a very light-hearted way. So I think that's kind of what I meant. It's like when this topic and difficult topics are only spoken about with this somber like level of seriousness, that is just not reality, because no one feels negative all the time. Like, do you know what I mean? There's like always some light to be sprinkled in. Or I feel like the feeling that you can't be light about these things is what is my pet peeve. That's kind of how I would like to phrase it. So not you should always be sunny and positive at all, but sometimes things are like, you just got to laugh when things are really bad, and you've got to like show the humor in it. So maybe that clarifies what I meant. But I totally agree with you. Toxic positivity is not the one. I think that might be it for today's podcast, unless anyone just for the audio viewers, I just nudged Zuzana quite aggressively, sorry. Yes, is there anything else that we want to touch on before we kind of close? I've really enjoyed this, by the way.
I've really enjoyed it too, and I kind of hope we 1, 2, 3. Very sorry. I would really hope we had like 2 hours and it will be multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
And because there are so many topics I would like to touch on, but it would be just so unrelated to everything we were just talking about. So really enjoyed it too.
No, and I think if you like this, guys, on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. On Spotify, I'm actually not sure you can react. Maybe you can. React if you can, if you enjoyed this. And we will have more in the future. But before I do an official close, Markéta, would you like to add anything?
More than sure that we will continue with this, even like off the record. So
even if you don't like it.
Wonderful. Well, with that, I will say on to the non-toxic positivity, but on a positive note. Yes, if you resonated with any of this, we'd love to hear in the comments, particularly on YouTube, but also follow us on Instagram, and we're on all socials. TikTok, Twitter, everything will be on the show notes, and we'd really love to like hear your pet peeves and connect with you, because viaGood is a community and we really want we want you all on board with us. So please go follow us, download viaGood on the iOS store, and it will be with you Android users in 2023. But until then, thank you.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye everyone.